Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RHAP coverage for season 7 of The Circle. 7 seasons deep already. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here this season to cover The Circle season 7. No AI this season, but instead some disruptors. And here to disrupt is Pooya. How you doing, Pooya?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we really went from not having the circle for a minute to now having our second season of the year, and we're already 4 episodes deep. It's all happening so quickly, but there always is some good stuff to talk about and some stuff to criticize. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and also with us is Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I'm fantastic, excited for another season of coverage. Just to be upfront at the top here, I will not be here for this season of coverage, just sort of stepping in for the premiere and letting these two lovely gentlemen carry forward. So you can consider me an NPC, if you will, for the rest of the
Ooh.
season, if you know what that means.
Oh man, are you a video game guy?
I guess so, and apparently that's a good or a bad thing, depending on how you read those acronyms. I'm certainly not an HBIC, that is for sure. I do not deserve that accreditation.
Yes. All right. Well, we are here after the first 4 episodes have dropped of The Circle season 7. We have all watched the first 4 episodes. We do not know anything beyond the first 4 episodes, so there will be spoilers to that point. And then next week we'll talk about the next 4 episodes. That's how this works. These 4 episodes, we're introduced to a new cast, a new twist, the Disruptor twist. How are we feeling?
I with this disruptor mode, I feel like I like the premise of it can be good or bad. I like that it's not a guaranteed good, so everyone's going to jump on it every time, and I like that it really incentivizes people who might feel a little shaky to give it a risk. But I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of skeptical on who and how people are getting selected. I mean, I know that integrity of the game, I should just trust them, but at the same time, after the way the first disruptor mode goes, and then the way the subsequent one goes, it kind of feels like I wish we knew ahead of time if it was going to be good or bad a little bit, because it kind of feels like, oh, we just get to decide how to steer this, and I don't quite love that part.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? That we go from Circle predating Big Brother in terms of the AI contingency to now, is this like the Circle version of the takeover? Of, hey, or even from a survivor perspective, like an exile island, ghost island, island of the idols, of like, well, here's this consistent structure thing that can come on and bring in a bunch of different things. We've already seen it a few times over. And I mean, I do think it's an interesting concept. I think the nature of it being public specifically most of the time is very fun, because then it provides this idea of like, okay, do you really want to stick your neck out there and not only put yourself at risk for whatever is behind the disruptor twist this time around, but also letting people know, hey, I feel in such a bad spot, or I'm feeling this particular way that I want to go for this. At the same time, I agree with Pooya. For me, it's not necessarily about who is getting the disruptor role. It's more so for me, like, listen, if I had a list, a menu of things that could happen, like, if depending on who gets the disruptor, is that when I decide to unleash the switch profiles? You know, if anyone but Gianna had gotten the first disruptor, is that when you put in the automatic non-elimination first blocking? I'm not entirely sure. So obviously this is supposed to bring a lot of variance into the game, and I think as a result it's brought a lot of variance in terms of outcomes. I'm still trying to kind of chew over how I feel about it, because then thrown on top with this brand new group and a lot of dynamics already, it's a lot of new happening at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that the order of disruptor abilities is fairly preset in terms of like how they've scheduled things. But like, I think I agree with you, Puya, that like I can't think of a less exciting way to award the disruptor ability to the person who goes disrupt, disrupt the fastest, especially when we watch them do that individually, one by
Right.
one.
No timer in the corner to show, okay, in real time, who is the fastest to the buzzer.
And
Like,
like, not for nothing, a 3-second countdown is not enough. I don't know. I agree. The way the countdown to then 4 people yelling it out and then deciding who yelled it out first, because assuming they all have to yell out right at 1. I don't know. What were we?
They're all just doing it instantly. The reason they're not showing us a split screen of them all doing it at the same time to judge who goes first is because it's nonsense. As somebody that has run little game shows over the internet, buzzing in with your voice never makes sense. It's very difficult. How do you judge who's first? Is it whoever uttered the first noise? Whoever went "d" first? Or whoever finished the word first? Disrupt versus disrupt. I don't know. What are you counting? And then it's a matter of how do you know what's are you making sure that they're all timed exactly the same? Are you counting the difference between when the countdown stopped and when they started saying it or when they finished saying it? What if they said, I want disruptor mode? Does that mean they don't get it because they didn't say disrupt? Do they need to say a specific phrase in order to it's stupid. It's stupid. It makes no sense. And it doesn't work for television either. Just give them a buzzer or something.
Disrupt button to hit.
Yes. That makes a lot more sense. There's a literal button on the screen. Have them press a button of some sort. That makes a lot more sense. And I feel like it's, then you can show a split screen of them being tapping the button. Oh, whose light does it, who gets what I don't know. This just feels very much like we just wanted to decide who we thought was best to give the disruptor to. So they're all going to say it at the same time. And then we're going to break the tie.
Yeah. I mean, what I will also say too, is that looking at last season, it's very clear that, yes, there were a couple of twists thrown in, but by and large, the 3 of us, and I think a lot of people enjoyed that season as well because of the cast and what they were able to bring from relatively free circumstances. Yes, we did have this sort of, was it BFF twist, the pair twist that happened halfway through, but outside of that, there wasn't a lot of bells and whistles going on. We definitely swing to the other side of that with season 7. And what's interesting is that season 6 and 7 were pretty much filmed back to back. They've moved to this new filming location. And so whether it was them responding to season 6 or just deciding to incorporate something else on the other side, see what happens. I am intrigued to see how this cast is going to respond to that. I mean, listen, we cover these shows. We know that sometimes bringing in a wealth of twists can have people playing surprisingly conservative. That hasn't happened so far, but something to look out for.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. That's the concern I have through the first 4 episodes here is that I came in kind of feeling like, okay, maybe last season was an anomaly. I've very vocally not been loving the US export of the Circle the way I did the UK, but I really like this cast. And I feel like they're bringing the heat. I feel like there's some good lines drawn in the sand. There's some good alliances being made. And I really am just hoping that these twists do not uproot and ruin that, because I think we're heading in a good direction right now. The cliffhanger disruptor mode that we got left with, there's definitely ways it can drum up more excitement, but there's also many ways it can just turn things sideways.
Yeah. Well, disruptor twists, I think, qualms aside, I like, because I think especially compared to the AI twist last season, I really enjoyed that one. I miss Max. I miss the AI component.
Oh yeah, now we can actually get your word, Taran. Max or Ainsley? Who do you prefer?
Obviously Max. I mean, come on.
I mean, Ainsley did introduce AI Arena, though.
Listen. That's Ainsley has nothing to do with that. But we are also introduced to a new cast, as Pooya said. Man, I know that the Circle casts tend to be very, I would say, enthusiastic. But this cast really, they really have a lot of enthusiasm.
I mean,
a lot of energy.
You could say horny. That's fine.
Fantastic. I mean, sure. There's that, but also just they're coming in. They're like, "Hey, I'm here. Hey, everyone, it's me." That is just all of them all the time.
Yeah, they're shot out of a cannon, and I feel like my history of watching reality TV, I've never felt old watching these shows.
Right?
This season of The Circle,
Me too.
bro, they're calling Andy grandpa. Andy's 34. Like yeah, it was a lot. I definitely felt my age watching this, y'all.
Yeah, well, especially again, given this group as well, which is wild that we have much more flirtation in the first 4 episodes than the entirety of a season called The Circle Singles. It seems like for whatever reason, this is a particular mix of people that are just macking on each other from the beginning. You already have K-Fern and several different people's DMs, but like there is still game mixed in, and that exuberance, I am glad that especially by like episode 3, it does also turn into some drama as well. I mean, listen, does it come at the cost of good gameplay? Perhaps, but I still love the fact that like these people certainly aren't afraid to come at each other from the beginning. And Michelle advertises this as like quote unquote the most brutal season of The Circle. We'll see what that entails as the season develops, but I think it's clear from the jump that that enthusiasm also comes into play when it comes for people just willing to say whatever whenever.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do a quick rundown of the cast here. I think we were introduced to Deborah, aka Rachel, first. And like immediately, like what a character. She's got like her little like doll of like voodoo doll of her husband, which like really came on the heels of I don't remember his name, but last season with like the pillow or whatever, yeah, or the picture of his wife, but he'd be like covering it up all the
Oh,
time.
Kyle.
He's
Yeah, Kyle.
doing the same thing of like covering up the like, oh, don't look, it's like, oh, somebody beat you to this one. But man, it's quite the image of the husband doll.
Very terrifying. Very, very terrifying. The disproportionate head to body size on this pillow is a lot. I don't know. I was trying to decide how I would feel if Liana got one of these of me. And I think my overall feeling was don't do it. I'll give you a good photo. Like keep the photo. That was the move.
No, you want something to squeeze. You want something tangible to touch
But
there. I love it.
This doll looks like it's one of those that's got like the little balls in it. So like the squeeze wouldn't exactly feel nice to the touch either, though.
Do you think if they took, when in the Demented Build-A-Bear that they built this thing, did they put a voice box in there? Do you think Mr. Number One Hubby's voice is coming out like, Deb, remember what the Elon Musk child's name is?
Yeah, okay, that's the thing. So Rachel has got to be one of the worst catfish we've ever seen. It's she very hilariously for the thirst trap pictures put a photo of Rachel drinking, thinking, yeah, she's thirsty.
I really feel like it should be as a rule of thumb, with the exception of Lee, who I loved River from season 2, but I feel like, now to Pooya's point, the sliding scale of what older means on this show is tragically low, but I feel like if you are an older person going onto the show, do not catfish as somebody younger. And look, I'm saying this as probably the fact that one of the primary reasons she was cast on the show is most likely because it's like, oh, I'll catfish as someone who's younger than me. And they're like, great, that's a great hook. But they're always going to throw these games in here where you're going to get tripped up by things that you should know from your age perspective. Or even in addition to that, I feel like before Deb just drops all guises and starts going for Kevin's jugular, it feels like the perception of her was very like blasé, was just very nothing on the surface. And that's the thing about catfishing is like you got to have a personality baked underneath that. And if you're kind of like overstretching your own boundaries past who you are, you're not really going to come across in a way that people want to necessarily work with outside of knowing the favorite gelato spot to go to in Long Island.
Yeah, I feel like if you're catfishing as someone in your 20s, everyone's going to expect you to know everything that they know. Whereas if you want to still go younger, I would say, based on what we just learned watching this, put like 36 to 38 in there. You're still young enough where, you can be in all the fun conversations, but old enough where if you don't know someone's child name, they're not going to be like, oh, you don't know. Or if you missed out on an abbreviation, no one's going to look at you sideways because like, oh yeah, that's Gramps right there. Like Gramps doesn't know. That's cool. Because I think the perception is that once you've passed that threshold, you just are not in the know with a lot of these things.
Well, here's my thing about that, right? Like, because then we got to that quiz, the pop culture quiz.
Yes.
And, the assumption is, well, Rachel is going to get a lot of these questions wrong. She's not up on the latest pop culture stuff, right? Except they all got so much wrong. Pooya, Mike, I beat all of them in this pop culture quiz.
That's nuts. That is wild. I can't believe
That's ridiculous. I got every
Yeah.
question right. How am I better at them than that? I was like, I feel old watching this, and then I did the pop culture quiz, and I was like, wait, what?
You didn't think George Clooney was a president?
I mean, that's what I kind of expect, right? To some, like, that's like,
Right.
okay, it's like, okay. But the abbreviations,
That
am
one
I
you should
wrong?
know.
Is that like an old person thing now? Are the youngins not doing abbreviations? They think TLDR is a compliment?
Yeah.
I don't know if they use, like, do people use acronyms anymore, those types in TikToks? Like, I feel like there are different nicknames and acronyms that Gen Zers use nowadays, but those feel like throwbacks to,
Well-
hell, HBSC coined by one Tiffany New York Pollard. That's from like 2000s.
Well, they have their own LOL now. They do not use LOL. They use IJBOL, Ijbol. That's a thing. But NPC famously has become super viral, not just on the video game space, but the whole TikTok NPC streams that were happening last year was very much in the Gen Z's playground. So that one you can immediately knock out. TLDR, I think it was Kevin who was like, I don't know what that is. It's like, have you never been on any forum ever? Because famously on Reddit, on even Twitter, like this is something that people write because they do not got the time. They want to give you the quick summation. So I don't know how that went unnoticed, but HBIC I think would have been more challenging for some of them, Mike, but I'm a grandpa, so I knew it immediately.
That's the thing. Is this more so? And look, I understand that it's a prime opportunity for us to dunk on people for not knowing celebrities or abbreviations. Is this more so an opportunity for us to look outwards and be like, do we need to touch grass? Are we the ones being segmented too much in our veritable apartments, paying attention to who Madonna has been married to? Do we need to go out and have a little bit more of an outwardly facing life where we don't care about what's being typed on the internet? I really had a reconciliation, not only with my own age, but with my own lifestyle based on the way these people were responding.
But see, that's what I'm saying, Mike. I'm that guy. I don't know pop culture stuff. That's always been my thing. And I still knew all of these questions.
Taran didn't.
Through cultural osmosis, like I couldn't help but know these questions, even though I try to avoid them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like a lot of these things without trying, they kind of get embedded. Like I couldn't tell you the first thing about anything Elon Musk. I knew Elon Musk's daughter name. You know what I mean? Like it just pops up and you just kind of consume it without realizing. Now I will say again, I cannot overstate this. The fact that Taran got them all right and Taran didn't know who the Spice Girls were. Like this is the same man right here.
True. That's very valid.
I did have to use like process of elimination on some, like the Brock Lesnar one. I was just like, the other two guys are like definitely wrestlers only, so it's probably this guy. And then Sean Penn, I was like, I think I vaguely remember that might be a thing. And yeah, but yeah, it's these. I don't know. It's maybe we're currently in the right age range for it.
I think that's very valid as well. When they're looking at that Brock Lesnar question, one of the options is Hulk Hogan, and it's someone I think I'm trying to remember.
Rock and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, then Madeline was like, "Oh, his name is Hulk." It sounds like maybe it was Jadeja. Like, oh, it's like. You don't know who Hulk Hogan is? Honestly, bless your heart.
Good for you.
You're in a better world for not knowing who Hulk Hogan is
from
a 2024 lens.
George Clooney as a former president was my favorite.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I mean, that makes George Clooney, I think, feel even older and then probably get a girlfriend that's like, continually younger, that he's like, wait, all these people don't know who I am. He's fallen so far out of that, even from our age perspective. Like, I feel like Clooney was still in his prime, considered one of the hottest men on earth, and now it feels like we are well past that hill for George
Well, it
Clooney.
did make me realize, like, what's the last thing George Clooney's been in? Like, I think he's doing
The
a thing recently. But,
the
like,
Nespresso commercials. That's what I know him from.
well, yeah. What's the last like big role?
Yeah,
that
you don't
George
think
Clooney-
Savannah was a big Michael Clayton fan? Didn't like frequent Good Night and Good Luck?
Yeah. All right. Anyway, Rachel, she's doing her thing. That's Rachel. Let's talk a little bit about Kevin, aka K Fern. How do we feel about K Fern? Because I don't like K Fern as a name.
I'm
Well,
happy. Yeah, I'm happy that they're calling him Kevin because I did not want to call him K Fern all season long.
So, Taran, do you know what this might be a reference to? Going back to that pop culture quiz.
No.
So, Britney Spears was at one point married to a man by the name of Kevin Federline, who
Okay.
popularly went by the nickname K-Fed. And so it's sort of, I think, a similar thing of Kevin and then take the first syllable of your F last name.
Do we think if we asked Kevin about that, would he have any idea what you're talking about?
I'm willing to bet no. I'm willing to
Probably
bet
not.
that someone at school called him K Fern. He's like, that's cool. We're keeping that. That's what I need everyone to call me now.
But Kevin truly putting the F in at Fern there, because this guy, I mean, it's interesting because he immediately gets in trouble for one of the many instances we see in the circle, which is, getting in good with everybody and then putting yourself immediately in a position of power. And, he gets really pressed to it. And we can certainly talk about the decision he made and how much he felt his hand was forced. But I mean, we saw that the top two influencers of the first round immediately fell to the bottom in the second round. There's a fair chance that might happen to K Fern in the next round as well, because despite the fact that he does have people behind him and there seems to be some sort of like gender quote unquote conflict brewing, despite all the catfish, Kevin is definitely being perceived by the other side as like the head of that snake.
Yeah. And he has, so he goes in, he says he's a lifeguard instead of an alcohol salesman, essentially. Which feels like such an unnecessary.
Yeah, a 23-year-old party goer who sells liquor is not a deceptive job. Like, unless you thought maybe the lifeguard thing would warm people's hearts towards you, I feel like that was not really a necessary step. Now, here's the question I have for the two of you. Do you think that he made a big mistake when he invited Gianna to the party and not Savannah? Because I genuinely think that's where he kind of shot himself in the foot big time by giving Gianna power and by stripping Savannah of any opportunity to stay up.
I mean, awful strategic play from Kevin so far.
Yeah.
Inviting Gianna to the party, then making an alliance with the party, which gets Gianna into the number two influencer spot with him. Then buckles and lets Gianna strong arm him into sending out Savannah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know, I'm sorry I keep going back to Big Brother, but like, it's very Quinn-esque for him of like, I'm in a position of power. Goodbye, one of my number one allies. Here we go. And it's like, I think for him, it comes down to just a fundamental misread of Gianna. Because I think on paper, it makes sense, right? She came in last in the first ratings. She was blocked, but then was saved. Hey, this is a lifeline I can throw. And I don't think he was certainly helped by the fact that Savannah, for some reason, decides not to make amends with Gianna, even though we know
For some reason, he probably wasn't given an opportunity.
Yeah, I was gonna say, given their conversations are limited, but I think then he really makes this supposition of like, oh yes, here comes meek Gianna, who's just gonna say, oh, any port in a storm, I want to work with this person, and then be able to succumb to his demands, only to find out that was not the case. And yeah, I'd be very intrigued to find out what had them ultimately settling upon that decision. Obviously, we know from like QT last season, yeah, that was a little bit different because she was technically the only influencer and Jordan was just sort of like there as her partner. But like, how long were they in there for? Could Kevin, we've always asked about this, he was the number one influencer. Does he have the tie break in that scenario? Or was it truly you have to leave with a name and he eventually abdicates?
Well, I think also, like, they went through a list of names and they eliminated a bunch. And, like, the thing was that what what Gianna the twins were doing was like, well, we are protecting fewer people, so we will go through the list, and then you will have more people left to protect, and therefore we will have the advantage, which really worked for them. But like, if you're Kevin, I don't get why he didn't go back to Jadeja. Like, hold on. I get that you two want to take out either Andy or Savannah, but those are my people. Why don't we go back to Jadeja, who we were both like mostly fine with, lukewarm on? That feels like a good compromise. And that would have been a much better person for him to take out. Wouldn't have been an ally nearly as much. And yeah, like, maybe Darion is upset about it, but like, it's better than nothing. Where does Darion have to go after that,
Right. So for me, I agree with what you're saying here. That would have made sense. I think in the moment where I saw his mind go was, okay, bros, there's 3. Savannah 1. Me keep 3. 3 equal good. 1 equal not good enough. Me keep
Right.
3. Let me keep Jadeja because Darion stay, Andy stay. Me keep 3. But then in the next episode, he's working on Andy and not Darion. And Darion is not in that group chat. And I was like, what are you doing? You need both those numbers now. I don't. So I can't even be like, that's why he did it. I don't know. Because I think that would have worked for him. He could have had his cake and eat it too, but he didn't do that.
I mean, I would imagine for him in trying to make that group chat with Garrett, maybe he felt that, okay, I'm locked in with Darion. Like, I want to bring Andy in because Andy has now been sort of called out as like, oh, I protected you. So let me shore that up and let me try to bring another person in. I don't know why you don't bring Darion into that guy's chat. Like, it just seems very odd, especially when you're trying to formulate something. Like, how sketched out would Garrett be if it's like, hey, we're part of this band, the Mermans. We're going to work together. Oh, and by the way, Darion's going to be here too. It just seems like an odd perception to have of like, oh, which was the perception that Gianna came in with this blocking, which is like, oh yeah, you're trying to have your hands in a lot of different cookie jars at this point. So we can easily smash one of those jars. But I mean, probably one of the biggest first blocking blunders I've seen in Circle history. And Savannah made that incredibly clear.
Yeah. All right. So that's Kevin. We can also talk a little bit about Darion, who he's just like living his best life. I mean, he's hanging out with his bros. He's making a connection with his queen, Jadeja, and just chilling.
I feel like pending any uproar, you can probably lock Darion in for the finale at this point. Like, he is a super steady personality, has a locked in number at 1 ally right now in Jadeja, is in a pretty good spot with the guys, but not necessarily in a position where he'll immediately be targeted by the guys, and Jadeja can protect him from the girls' side of things. So I think as long as it keeps being steady Eddie, I think he's going to do well.
I agree with that. I feel like he's in a very good spot. He is playing neutral in all the oncoming fires in that apartment complex. I like where he's standing right now. I do think that he might have to put in a little more personality with other people and not focusing on one person. But I think for finale purposes, he's fine. Winning purposes, I'm not quite convinced yet.
Yeah. Well, Jadeja, I think similar position, just on the other side of things, working with women, but has the connection to Darion. They both like the level of flirting on the Circle is very strange. It's like you immediately go to king and queen, husband and wife, stepfather and
no chill
mother. But it's they just seem to. They're just such each other's types that they're just locked in. And I don't know. There's not much more to say about it.
It's confirmation bias, right? Like, once they saw the pictures of each other, it was that spark was pretty much there, and then the kindling just lit up once they actually started talking. They're like, wait a minute, you have 11 brothers and sisters? I have one. Yet another thing we have in common, Jadeja.
Yeah. You want to work with me? I want to work with you. Oh my God. We're meant for each other.
Yeah, so I think it is very, very, very unlikely that these two splinter at any point because it seems like while they have their people that they're loyal to, I don't think any of them are so concretely established to those sides that they're not going to move together as some sort of block.
Yeah. We also have the twins. How do we feel about Gianna? Because these two don't feel real.
I mean, I can't believe that Joey Sasso underwent mitosis and split into two different people.
The first thing I thought about was like they're matching that energy, but younger and louder, and there's two of them.
I do not mean this as a dig. I constantly listen to them and think, surely they're putting on a voice. But it's always.
I mean, listen, Taran, growing up in the tri-state area, this is Staten Island, baby. Like
It's because it's not the accent, it's the way they talk. It's the like, all right then. Like it's just so much gravel and force. It's like it's just so interesting.
I love it. I love them so much. They're like an anthropomorphic jar of marinara sauce. Like they are just such a trope. And I thought they were so hoes from the beginning. And look, I'm still feeling a little bit of a way of like, haha, you thought you were blocked, but you're not. Because that just absolutely screws Andy and Savannah of like,
Yeah.
your easy decision isn't so easy more. And they didn't even know about it. The Disruptor thing activated while they were in the freaking blocking chambers. So they couldn't do a thing about it. But it was really interesting to see Gianna pivot and, have this bounce back. And I do like the two-person teams to sort of have the back and forth between each other. Like, what do you think we should say? How about 3 exclamation points? No, 1 exclamation point. Like watching the two of them go back and forth. And I will say, listen, it's a little bit of a low bar in terms of catfishes this season, but they are far and away the best catfish so far.
Seemingly, yeah. I do think it's weird that it's one of their girlfriends.
Why?
That they're catfishing as. It just feels weird.
I thought the thirst trap photo was odd. Of like, oh, I remember this really saucy one that she sent me, like Ma's gravy. Here, let's post it. Like, I feel that's weird on both of the brothers' parts.
Like, I'm now flirting with a guy as my twin's girlfriend. Like, it just feels like it gets a little complicated. But yeah, I think they're very fun to watch. And they also like they are very clearly strategic in how they play the game. They early on form this bond with Rachel about Long Island. And again, like what Rachel says is like, "Oh, my mom grew up there and I was there once." But here's all this deep knowledge I know about it.
And they're like, oh, she's authentic. That's perfect. We know exactly where she is. I think they were just excited to have someone know where they're from.
Yeah. I mean, this is real. This is serious. This is they're bonded for life. They are allies for the game.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think to the point where Gianna is possibly going to sink her game and possibly get blocked for a second time over the fact of like, no, I'm going to bat. You all might hate her, but she knows the place to go for ice on Long Island.
So is ice like slushies?
No, ice is like Italian ice.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
New to this.
Pooya, do they not have Italian ice in Canada?
They did not. Or if they did, I did not know where to procure it.
So, have you ever had like a snow cone before? It's not exactly the same thing, but it's something similar where it's like a shaved ice with a flavoring or a syrup to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something like that, but I would say it's more like finely, less granulated, something closer to an ice cream, I would say.
Like the gelato of shaved ice?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, cool. Interesting.
Yeah. And oh man, what I think they talked about like a pizza place as well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Classic. All right, so very fun stuff from the twins. We also had Savannah, our first actually blocked person with her dog Samson, and truly no shade to Savannah, but I'm really gonna miss the dog.
The dog was so cute.
So cute.
Yeah.
And I loved her bringing the dog as a final guilt trip for Kevin. Where, like,
No, you don't get to be his stepdad anymore.
Yeah, where the dog gets down and starts walking all around Kevin's place. Kevin's like, "Oh, he likes her." She's like, "Yeah, well, he's not gonna be here anymore because you blocked me."
It was such a weird interaction. Like, I know Michelle was calling it out, but like it was so weird. He was just like, "Wow, I can't believe this is happening." Like, "Oh man, well, I'm still the daddy, right?" And she's like, "No, you just blocked me." And he just didn't seem to understand that he just totally screwed
Yeah.
her over.
It was so weird to me that he didn't grasp, hey, maybe the fact that you made it seem like you were ride or die and then you announced that she's blocked will not land well with her.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's like, "Well, I'm so sorry. My hands were tied. I had to compromise." Do you think she wants to know that she was the collateral damage, that she was less valued than some of the other people, and that's the reason why she's going, despite the fact that you were her number one ally?
Yeah. Weird stuff there. She seemed fun. I think that maybe she got a little too focused on Kevin. Unfortunately for her, Kevin was not the person to focus on. But that's gonna be it for her here. That is no more Savannah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. She announced it, but I mean, I feel like especially later in the game, people have definitely gone from like influencer to blocked, but she has to be one of the earliest people to do it. I actually think maybe there was another. I'm thinking actually maybe another person named Savannah in season 2. It happened as well, right? Because
Yeah,
that the whole
wasn't it?
like
It was Terralisha versus Savannah.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
think the exact same thing happened to her. So I think it's just if your name is Savannah on this show, you're doomed to go in the first 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Well, not many people also block someone and then have them stay in and become influencer and block them right back either. So that's also another part of it.
Yeah. Not great. Um, All right. Well, we also, of course, have Heather, aka Andy, the rock star, and it seems as though I feel like I caught a bunch of people being like they think it. I didn't catch any like obvious tells, but they all seem to feel like they're skeptical of Andy as a catfish.
It was the Madonna question that for whatever reason they're like, okay, despite the fact you work with metal bands, surely you must know all music. Why don't you know that Madonna was involved with Sean Penn? Maybe you're not really a musician.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be more than that because that's so weak.
Yeah, I think part I don't think it's been said on the show, but part of me feels like are they just looking at someone like Andy and be like, you'd never come on this show. This doesn't seem like something a big metalhead would want to do is get in the circle where everything is like sunshine and smiles. Like you're not about this life. Which is funny because she picks Andy because she feels like they see me, they'll think I'm fake.
Mm.
Only for this to happen. But I think despite it, I mean, we're kind of seeing proof of it as of right now that this, even if there's some suspicions there, I think there's quite a few people that are shooters for Andy and want to work with Andy long haul.
Yeah,
Would they have thought Heather was fake? Because I don't think they would have.
I don't think so. I really don't. I feel like we saw quite a few people playing their authentic selves, and no one has second guessed it at all. I think Heather would have been safe. I think
Yeah.
her big worry was her verbiage, right? It wasn't how she looks. It was I speak like a dude, and if I speak this way, they'll think I'm catfishing,
She
which I'm
says
not.
she speaks like a dude, but when I'm looking at her texts,
Yeah,
They're not
she
dudeish. They're
she
fine.
uses the word bro, but yeah, she even pulled out like the "I love you," and it's like, yeah, I mean, dudes do say "I love you" sometimes, but like
We
not
say
within.
it.
Yeah, but not within the first couple of conversations of like, just so you know, I love you, dudes. Like I don't know. That also doesn't feel very Andy to me. You know, like that feels more Ben from Survivor of like that type of metal than the metal that Andy is trying to personify.
yes, not to gender language or anything like that, but like in terms of her portraying Andy, when she types, it does not feel like what I expect Andy to be, at the very least. So maybe a little bit of a misstep there, but I think she's doing pretty well in the game. It was really wild that she was almost blocked in that spot. And I think it's primarily due to the situation where she was the influencer. with the Gianna situation. But like apart from that, I think in a decent spot again now. Not super likely to be blocked at this point with Kevin being a bigger target over her. And it's I think very funny that she was like, oh man, now this new person, Madeline, came in. I'm gonna have to flirt with her because she's definitely gonna be Andy's type.
Well, and that we'll see that as well. If it really does end up sizing up to be a gender war on the
Mm.
circle, that's something that's incredibly important to have. We just talked about this with Darion. I could see that if and when Kevin is taken out, I think Andy could be next up. So if he does have someone to vouch for him in the form of Madeline on the other side of like, listen, I know you want to get rid of Andy, but don't worry, he's cool. I think that's what he needs. I mean, that's the other thing as well is what Madeline really appreciates, ironically enough, is like, oh, I love the fact that, you want to link with me on a personal level before we discuss strategy. You weren't just sliding into my DMs to be romantic. So it's, again, the fact that the verbiage is not necessarily maybe as masculine coded as she thought, that is actually endearing Heather and Andy to the quote unquote other side.
Yeah. We also have Madeline, who I believe is the one that thought George Clooney was the former president. And at the very least, also I think mixed up TLDR. And apart from that, though, it seems very fun. The connecting with Andy at the end of this episode, she is the one that's going to have to swap profiles with Rachel, which she was not pleased with, and for good reason. I think Madeline was in a fine position, whereas Rachel not as much.
Which is maybe why you shouldn't have taken the disruptor
Mhm.
job.
Super screwed. Madeline definitely got the short end of the stick here in trying to swap around profiles. So can we quickly talk about that disruptor? Because that is where we end up cliffhangering the episode. So if I understand it correctly, they're going to be swapped until the blocking. If they don't get blocked, they stay in. As in, if Madeline, the avatar, survives, then Madeline, the player, stays in. Right?
I'm assuming it's the opposite. That you as like Madeline as Rachel, if Madeline as Rachel gets blocked, then Rachel becomes Rachel again and Madeline is gone.
Ooh, so
Oh.
that's kind of what I thought it could be. Well, that's okay. So that makes sense because then they wouldn't want you to just trash the avatar you
Yeah.
are, right? You wouldn't want to just
Sabotage
cause
it, yeah.
fires everywhere. So that'll be interesting. So that's a huge plus for Rachel. But then if they both survive, then they both stay. It's not like one of them has to get blocked, right?
And
Yeah.
then they just switch back. Yeah. Then it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, that was our Freaky Friday, and now we're back, and everything I said the past 2 days was not me.
Oh, this is very good though, because Madeline is going to now get a first row seat into the Gianna and Rachel connection, and that'll be fun. Whereas on the other side, Rachel's going to have to flirt with Andy and then flirt or talk to Kevin and maybe misunderstand that you don't need to flirt with Kevin and then proceed to flirt with Kevin. So.
But yeah, I feel like Madeline's fine. She was a fun, like, new person to bring. I feel like her and Garrett, especially, I think, got some more story to them. Whereas opposed to when they first came in, especially considering all the conflict that came out as soon as they came in from other people,
Mhm.
like, they were kind of just witnesses to the whole thing. But I could also understand why she got cast, right? This whole hook of like educator, works in education by day, OnlyFans influencer by night, and her being upfront about it as well is interesting. And that's also, again, going to seed some very fun stuff for Deb as Rachel as Madeline, trying to put on her best like hat on a hat next episode.
I'm curious to see how they play as each other, and yeah, more interestingly, like what kind of secrets get exposed to. I like this. I mean, this idea of the whole show is based around catfishing and false identities, and I feel like we don't often do enough with that. And so what they've done with this twist, fair or not, is like introduce false identity that actually matters. Like, it's not just like I'm pretending to be like I could be Bob, or I could be Fred.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know Bob or Fred, so it doesn't really matter to me which one you're pretending to be. But when Bob is my best friend and Fred is my enemy, now it matters whether you're Bob or Fred, and it matters who's pretending to be who, because those relationships already exist. So you're swapping identities and you're making these false identities within the context of the little setup you've already built.
Yeah. So the first two disruptors, they got publicly outed to the entire circle. A, do we think this will also be publicly outed? And B, if it does, we're assuming it'll be after it's done.
Yes,
right?
it'll be after it's done. I imagine it will be. I think the only time I'm trying to remember, because the closest I could think of this, to your point, Taran, is like in season 3, Nick got the temporary fake profile, right? It was like Vince the ghost hunter that he got to occupy. And I was trying to remember for Vince if they were notified. I don't think they were notified that it was a fake profile until the end. Otherwise, I think the circle is largely transparent after the fact of like, oh, by the way, this was a twist, so don't worry about it. Because otherwise, like, imagine having the ability to say, hey, yeah, when I did this thing before, sorry, I actually didn't make that alliance. It was someone swapping it as my, I got doxxed, I got catfished, and someone took my profile, they got into my messages and sent out all these things. So apologies. It could be a really nice defensive tactic to use, but I do think for the transparency sake of the game, they are going to reveal it. And then I think they'll probably have the player step forward in the chat and be like, oh, yeah, I was the one that got swapped with Rachel or Madeline, etc.
Yeah, and of course, like, the issue here is there's all the incentive in the world if you are in danger of getting blocked for a player like Madeline to go to Andy and be like, "Hey, I'm not actually Rachel right now. I got the disruptor thing and they swapped me. I'm Madeline. I can prove it by talking to you about a conversation that we've had previously." Um, and I'm assuming they don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And so they will just prevent her from being able to because they control all lines of communication. But like, how do you even allow any interaction between Madeline as Rachel with Andy when all she's trying to do is communicate that she's I mean, I guess you just keep telling her, like, "Sorry, we're just not gonna let you say this, so you might as well you have to play ball with us or you're not gonna be able to talk."
Or this is the benefit of like a slowly growing line in the sand is, Andy could certainly say, why the hell would I want to have a conversation with Rachel? No, decline message. I don't want to talk to her.
Maybe. Yeah, I think this could be fun. I think this is, I mean, I guess it's technically part of the Disruptor twist, but, I think the Disruptor concept still doesn't really work for me, but I'm curious about this swapping profiles twist. I think this is this has some potential for some fun.
Yeah, I wonder how many I feel like it'll be one episode, maybe two.
All right, well, they say
upcoming.
until the next blocking. So I imagine
Right.
it's going to be cliffhanger from episode 5 into episode 6, calling it right now.
Yeah. All right. And then of course, there is Garrett. I feel like Garrett so far is probably the most under-edited contestant.
Yes.
I feel like the most I got from Garrett was his invite to the band, and that little like dilemma they gave him of like, oh, well, the girls are talking to you. Do you want to accept the guy invite? And he had to choose. They love doing those little moments. But it didn't even seem like it had any long-term implications. Like there's like, oh, he left.
Yeah.
And then he went to a different conversation.
Yeah, I feel like for Garrett, we did have a moment where Garrett talked about how, I feel like the boys have the numbers. That's where I might need to go. Because I think, especially, we haven't really talked about this yet, but Rachel kind of just steering into the skid out of nowhere, and her and Gianna really having each other's backs, I think it's very evident that they're on an island. So I don't think Garrett's going to stick with them for too long.
No,
I
they're
think
on
the
Long
band
Island.
is long term. Exactly. With ice.
Yeah,
I mean, ironically, and I don't know that this was intentional. Maybe it was. Maybe Kevin, will be online being like, no, 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 my decision was more strategic than you think because I knew that Savannah had a connection to Rachel. But like Savannah was the other person that could have been beneficial in some small way to Rachel and Gianna because of their connection. And so Savannah leaving, while definitely good for Rachel in that she didn't go, Andy would have been a lot better. And she is still in the kind of a tough spot here, it seems. But now that she gets to play as Madeline, who knows? She's got some
Yeah.
options.
Yeah, I think Garrett, I mean, from a personality perspective, seems like a lovely guy, fun go-to for React, but obviously was not involved in a lot of stuff from either a strategic or personal perspective to really offer any insight. So I'm glad we got this stuff right at the last second in this batch of episodes. And now him sort of being caught in the middle, that's a position he can ride pretty well. It does seem like he is also maybe someone who reacts to the last thing he's been told. Like, he was super into the girls' conversation of like, I don't want to leave the guys. I'm having a great time right now. And then as soon as he finishes with the merman, he's like, no, I really like them too. Oh man, I'm feeling good about this. So it'll be nice and messy if and when Garrett does get voted #1 influencer, because you know it's going to happen, because the guys and the girls are going to rank him #1. And because they're going to rank each other low, that's going to push him to the top. And then just like we saw with Kevin, I think it's going to be very tough for him to find that sort of neutral option that doesn't sever one side immediately.
I mean, that's where, again, I feel like that's the danger of the sort of Jadeja Darian position, is that, like, they are not in the mix enough to necessarily be protected, but they should be in a spot to be rated fairly high because they're theoretically well liked on both sides. So like they need to potentially rely on that to stick around more. Because I mean, I say that, but then like Jadeja didn't even seem like an option in the previous one. So maybe there's more going on there. But that would be my typical concern, is that like you do want to be entrenched a bit, because you do sometimes have to just like lose people. So I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Anything else? We had so the initial questions I thought were not as fun as last season's.
No, but for some reason, these people were able to make content out of it, because why? It's a purely fictional scenario.
Mhm.
If you don't know how to swim, you could still say you're going to save a dog from a frozen lake. Why are you immediately trying to paint yourself as a demon person by being like, nah, I'm sorry, the dog's gotta drown? Like, don't be so pragmatic about these types of questions, especially as a first impression.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes, I said, no, but always say yes. Like in that situation, always say yes, no matter what. No matter what, you got to always say yes. Ultimately, that did work a little bit because he was able to save it by talking to Andy and be like, yo, I can't swim. That's kind of why I said that. But everyone was looking at him sideways. Like he was the devil reincarnate in that house. He was going to get low ratings for sure.
Yeah. It's like yes or no questions. Nobody knows anything about you. Would you save a dying puppy from a lake? No.
But also, not for nothing, the vibe on these questions kind of was all over. It was like, would you send nudes? Would you have sex on an airplane? Would you save a dying puppy? Like, what is this range we're going to?
Maybe Max generated the questions.
Yeah, Max, like for maximum emotion, we go pleasure first, then pain.
Yeah, it's like, are you into BDSM? Would you ever find a cure for cancer? Like, I don't. My brain's in a tizzy right now.
Oh man. And then okay, the thirst trap challenge.
Oh, I'm very confused by this as well. Was there a rubric?
No.
It was just you have to respond in emojis. So then I don't know if they came up with this criteria, but it just became it's either heart eyes or fire or both. And then it's how much, and then like what's the difference?
What's
it was
the
all
weighting?
over the place.
Like, is how many fires is one hard eyes or vice versa?
And they were being so specific. Give me 4 hard eyes, 3 fires, please.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna decipher the rubric, to me, the fire emoji is hot. So the more fires, the more you're saying hot at the end. So that's like really attractive. The hard eyes are kind of a substitute. You don't want to put a heart in there. That's too extreme. It's too early to be lovey-dovey and hearts in there. So the hard eyes were like, oh my God, I have eyes for you. 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 So the more of that you put there, you were like, this is my person. This is who I'm looking at. Or again, this is my interpretation of these emojis right now.
Yeah, like I guess it's supposed to be an emoji form of an applause meter, but like I
Mhm.
thought that the bank was open, which is when Rachel posts her like literal thirst trap, that it would have provided a bunch more emojis of like lame, womp womp, etc. But instead they're like, I'll only do 2 fire emojis instead
Yeah.
of my usual 5.
Circle, give me 2 fire emojis, 4 tomato emojis.
Yeah. I mean, to see them talk about like, oh man, I was really hoping for more emojis from that person. Or like, let's go. The 20 emojis. Like it was just so strange. Like the whole situation. And I guess like a great little like study on how quickly you will like adapt to a new language and like social dynamic of like, somebody set the tone in the first one of this is a normal amount of emojis. So now anything above or below that is a comment on that person in some capacity. So very strange. I was expecting with how much emphasis they put on the amount of emojis that people were getting that would mean something at the end. Like who got the most amount of emojis or whatever. But no, that was just it.
Yeah, I kind of wish they did that more, especially with the disruptor powers, like provide rewards. And I feel like they've done that a couple times. I mean, obviously, again, that was how they linked up people in the quote compatibility test last season. But I think it also makes it interesting in that in the pop culture quiz, for example, you had people certainly throwing answers one way or the other based on your profiles. But it'd be interesting to sort of have that tug with, okay, there's a direct incentive to doing well. And if you ace the quiz, you get something, whether it's a power, whether it's like, and maybe what Kevin got, which is like, hey, they're doing a party later tonight. You get to invite someone for like a one-on-one date. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like there should be fun stuff to sort of throw into those games as well. They're fun and they're entertaining to watch sometimes, but I think let's throw some gaminess on top of that just to
Well,
add the cherry.
instead, we're just watching them go, disrupt. Oh crap.
Oh no! Your screen got disrupted.
Oh boy. All right. Well, feel free to carry on. I'm just gonna restart my computer real quick.
Oh boy.
All right.
Well, Pooya, should we talk about like the tension was okay, simmering, I would say, for the first couple episodes, and
Mhm.
then in comes Rachel. And again, I don't want to keep making Big Brother references, but like, are we looking at an alternate universe where Angela from Big Brother 26 plays the circle in the form of Deb?
That was the energy. She came in like, you know what? I know Gen Zers. My child is a Gen Zer. I'm gonna have all the lingo. I have notes. And then immediately she was like, stoked? Is that a my word or what? And it seemed like she was kind of insecure a little bit at the beginning, kind of finding her footing. But none of it could have prepared me, Mike, for this moment in the at-risk chat where she decides, forget all that. I'm that bitch now. This is who I am. I'm going to cause chaos. I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to talk smack about one of the influencers. It felt like they didn't build up to this moment for me, which you couldn't have built up to that moment with Angela on Big Brother either. So to your point, I felt a little bit of that energy. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to, again, if I'm putting myself in her headspace the same way Angela did, and apologies again for the non-Big Brother watchers, but like basically what happened is this first week, somebody wins head of household, the most powerful position in the house, and then they have like a long sleepless night where they are brought into an alliance, but the paranoia just starts spiraling in their mind, and they are led to believe, no, the entire house is conspiring against me right now. I'm being lied to. And it's all being led by this one young man right here. And so then she wakes up one morning, walks downstairs, and delivers a diatribe just completely dressing this guy down, accusing him of crazy eyes, controlling the house, etc. And so again, it's a little bit apples and apples to me of she similarly, I think Deb felt that she was in a position where she, felt that her game was a little bit in jeopardy. Again, the pop culture quiz did not go well. And so she kind of goes for broke here. Another reason why she decides to become the disruptor is like, all right, well, I got to improve my position. Maybe instead of bringing myself up, I could try to drag someone down alongside me. And as a result, she just tears into Kevin, and it causes quite a fire early on.
Yeah, and to me, honestly, I think Rachel's best play has been finding and locking in with Gianna, because I do not think anyone else in the circle is going to go to bat for their number one the way Gianna's doing. No one's going to put up this kind of fight for somebody in this circle. No way. No way. So that is the luckiest person they could have picked in, and that person ended up being co-influencer, which really helps them catapult into here. And honestly, now for Deb, for Rachel, Madeline being on your profile ain't so bad for you. She's going to probably smooth some things over, make some connections you didn't have before, and land you in a good spot.
I mean, listen, for Rachel, just imagine for a moment, because she was nearly blocked in the first blocking, but she made that last-minute connection with Savannah, which helped save her. Then she was nearly blocked in the second one, but luckily Kevin screwed up so bad by inviting Gianna to the party that she managed to survive that one as well. Imagine now if they finally block Rachel, except it was actually Madeline, and now Rachel is still there. That's 3 in a row.
Again, not too dissimilar from one Angela Murray, who has seemingly had 9 lives in this game. Yeah, I mean, what's so interesting as well is, like, I feel like the at-risk chat should be a permanent fixture of the circle from now on. Honestly, I'm surprised they don't do it more, of just, like, have the players talk amongst themselves, because it then also creates this immediate ironic comedy of just Rachel tearing into Kevin in absentia, while in the influencer chat, Kevin is being convinced/coerced to basically keep Rachel in the game, only to come back saying, like, yeah, remember the person you kind of kept in honor of letting go of someone who you were the number one ally? Yeah, she just, like, completely undressed your game and said that you shouldn't be trusted. Welcome back, Kevin.
Yeah. And we get this, this seems to happen like once a season, at least for the good seasons, where like there's just an all-out brawl post blocking of like influencers throwing each other under the bus, people coming at each other, people coming at the influencers for the decisions that they made, people choosing sides. This is, I think, the circle at its best.
Yeah, it's been good so far. I think, there was big shoes to fill coming out of season 6. Season 7 so far, thumbs up. We'll see where we go from here.
Yes. One thing I did want to ask you guys before my computer froze was about the thirst trap challenge. Do you guys just have thirst trap photos just hanging around for, like, if I said, all right, guys, thirst trap challenge, show us your thirst trap photos. What do you got?
I have some. They're not recent. It's been a minute since I've thirst trapped, but when you're in a long distance relationship, it's necessary,
That's true. That's true. I would say, from my perspective, as someone who has been dating the same person for 13 years, there's no need for a picture. The pitcher of water is right there on the counter for you to get a cup of.
But thirst traps aren't nudes, right? They're not like just lewd photos sent to a partner. People put thirst traps on Insta. You know what I mean? Like you post, like, it's just you at the beach, abs out, nipples out for you, Mike. It's that.
Yeah, see, I thought Mike would be the one to answer yes to this, because
I guess technically
has
speaking,
some diaper photos.
Yeah.
No, not those. I mean, that's the thing. Incidentally, I think I have thirst trap photos. Like, there is plenty of footage that exists of me shirtless or nearly naked for the sake of a bit on Al Gore's internet. So I suppose, from that logic, yes, I did not realize those were thirst trap photos when I posted them.
Yeah. Taran, your answer?
No, that's why I asked, because I was just like, it's like, I don't know if this was another age thing or maybe it's just a me thing, but like when they were just like, yeah, just post your thirst trap photos, like everyone's obviously got some. I was like, what would I be doing in this situation?
Maybe it's like Drag Race, where you're given a prompt ahead of time of, like, there'll be a black and white runway, there'll be a 50s runway. It's like, please prepare for your profile, real or fake, a thirst trap photo, an on-the-go photo, a dancing photo.
Honestly, I hadn't even thought of this. If I played the circle, I would need to do a bunch of photo shoots.
I thought about that. I was like, if I wanted to go as me, I would need to plan a year in advance and take so many photos before I get on there.
Yeah, I definitely don't have enough photos for this. I mean, like, obviously I have, and listen, I am a person who does content online. And I still don't feel like I have enough. I weigh
Right.
more than I would if I was just a normal human.
Yeah, you're like, all right, on the go. This is me behind the mic on Big Brother 25, day 37. Oh, my thirst trap. This was me behind the mic on Big Brother 26, day 13.
Exactly. All right. Anything else from these episodes to bring up before we wrap up here?
Should be noted, I believe from our initially announced cast, everyone is in except for one,
Yeah.
which we like, right? We like front loading
Yes.
our people. And they actually did tease in the coming up that there was going to be a player purge. So I'm not sure what that entails.
The apocalypse. Yeah, it looks like or feels like maybe more than one person gets blocked over in one night is kind of my feeling. Maybe two.
I
So-
wonder if I wonder if they ever do a disruptor where the person that chooses to be the disruptor just leaves.
I
that
mean,
would be messed up.
I thought it was going to be that when two people pick the disruptor twist, that it was, okay, you two are the only ones that
I
are
thought that
eligible
too.
for blocking.
Yeah. The second they said there were two of them, I would not have done it. I was just like, that is way too dangerous. At best, those two people become influencers, which, okay, fine. I'm not an influencer. That's at worst, it's awful. You're one of two options. Clearly, what we just saw, you're going to switch profiles. I guess for Rachel, that might be a good thing. But like, yeah, when it was multiple people, I was like, that's way too dangerous. No way am I choosing that one. I did think the first one, though, I would have done. I was like, they definitely will do something good for the first one, because if they do something bad, nobody's ever going to choose to do it. You know, like you
Especially
need to.
yeah, especially on night one. Like, I think we know by now they're not going to do night one blockings. They did it with Xanthi and Brett a couple seasons ago, and then they came back as that like unified persona. This time, Gianna was blocked on night one. You could just tell from a scheduling perspective, they're not going to have that happen. So it's a pretty easy thing that even if you get blocked, you'll get some sort of second chance or something.
Yeah. All right, well, there it is, the first 4 episodes of The Circle. I'm hopeful for the next batch. I feel like this one maybe got to a little bit of a slow start, but I feel like definitely kicked in by the end. And so hopefully we're rolling here by the next 4 episodes. But that is what we have for you this week. We will be back for those 4 episodes to talk through what goes down in The Circle episodes 5 through 8. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, check out all of the Big Brother coverage going on, the scripted stuff we have going on here at RHAP. Plenty podcasts to sink your teeth into. So check it all out. Mike, what do you got going on?
Yeah, so as I mentioned off at the top, unfortunately, this will be my one stop in for Circle coverage. I'm not able to commit to the weekly coverage this season just because of what is upon us. Not the apocalypse, but the Survive-pocalypse, perhaps, because we're talking a week before the premiere of Survivor 47. If you are into that show, I got everything you need in terms of doing preseason press, finding out everything you need to know about these players in audio, written, podcast, visual, any sort of format you might need before the premiere kicks off. And then I'm doing coverage there with the BNB, with doing press for Parade.com, where I'm also covering Big Brother. I am going to try to do some exit press for the Circle for Parade, stopping and maybe talking, seeing if I can talk with Savannah this week or other people as they're eliminated. But I'm also covering the challenge, as well as Taran said, doing scripted stuff. So there's a lot on my plate, but I'm really excited to listen for what you guys are going to be covering and what the season is going to provide in the next few weeks. You can follow everything I'm doing at a Mike Bloom type. TLDR, lots of stuff.
All right, and Pooya?
I can be found on Twitter at Pooyaism, twitch.tv/Pooya, which is where I am when I'm not podcasting. 90 Day Fiance before the 90 days. Brand new season of 90 Day. It's been fun so far. I had Leon on with me episode 1, making her debut. Lavina joining me in episode 2. And then myself and Chappelle talked about the entirety of Bel Air season 3. That should be all available on Recap Kickback. Check that out. It's always a good time with Chappelle, and this time was no different. And that's about everything right now. However, we're coming back with The Traitors Canada season 2 launching in about 2 weeks here. And that's going to be a lot of fun. For those of you that did know what Mike was talking about when we talked about Big Brother, Netta from BB Can is going to be on that season. So that should be an intrigue for me. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today, and we will see all of you next time.